It is my privilege to introduce Matt Reider to share his job search story. And for him, he didn't have to suffer very long. So, Matt, it's all you.
Hi. Well, yeah. About suffering not too long. I do feel a little bit guilty about that. I'm inspired by everyone's hard work and work ethic in applying for jobs. And this job team is I'm very grateful and fortunate to be a part of it and to hear everyone's stories and their methods and strategies. Because this situation is not unique and could happen again in the future. So it's good tips and tools to have in my toolkit for the future. Um, I worked at Maverick for 5.5 years as a site development manager. And so that's under the store development team. And my role and responsibility there was to permit and entitle new stores, primarily focusing on the civil engineering and the land use side of things. So when you go to a Maverick and you see sidewalks, pavement, uh, the entrances for the driveways, and then everything you don't see underground, we call it horizontal construction. Basically, before the building, I'm in charge of ground work and getting that all permitted. And so I did that for Maverick for a little over 5.5 years before being laid off. March 18th was my notice. That's when I met with my manager, and that was a kind of a bummer day. And my last official day of employment with Maverick was April 1st. And I think they did that to help me out with insurance. And, it was part of the layoff plan. Um, and so March 18th is when I started applying, shotgun approach. Um, I'm originally from Washington State. I actually moved down to Utah. My wife got her master's degree down here. And so Maverick and my wife's school was just going to keep us here for 2 years. But Maverick treated me very well. And my wife was able to find an amazing job. So we stayed. I'm in a house that is going to be listed this week, but um, yeah, so Washington State is where I grew up, and that was one of the states where I was looking for jobs. And so I did a lot of applications at once to Washington jobs and Utah. Um, and so my first interview was with a recruiter, and I actually applied with this recruiter. It was a staffing agency, but the company wasn't listed yet. Just the roles and responsibilities matched my background. And so I applied there, got a call back, had to answer a few basic questions about my experience and my knowledge base. And then a week later, I had my first interview with Pacific Lifestyle Homes, Garrett Custom Homes. They're one company, but two different brands. And so a little bit about them. They do residential development, kind of in the name with homes. But I'll be taking raw land, subdividing it, getting all the utilities and infrastructure and roads and all of that developed so that they can build homes on the land. And so that plays into my background. I have a degree in urban planning. I've worked for civil engineering firms, and a lot of my work for Maverick in the commercial development space can translate over to residential. So I think that helped me with my um, application approach. I've applied to cities, counties, and private developers. I've applied to places like here in Utah, there's a company called Phoenix Towers International. They do your cell phone towers, wireless communication facilities. I've applied for home builders like Lennar and DR Horton. Um, and before my first interview with Pacific Lifestyle Homes, I interviewed with a tribe to be a planner within the tribal government, and I applied and I got an interview with a county job as a planner there. Didn't move on anywhere from first interviews with those two places. So with Pacific Lifestyle Homes, the first interview was remote, virtual, just sitting here at my desk. And it was with the hiring manager and HR talent acquisition manager. Um, it was fairly quick compared to my second interview. Again, going over my experience in my previous roles and able to ask them some questions about what their product is and what they expect this role to fulfill and reasons for this job opening. um, and then that went really well. I felt pretty good about it. So like you do, immediately after, send them a thank you note. And then the recruiter called me and asked me how it went. And then he was, I think, a very influential role or just helpful. And he kept following up with them, making sure that they didn't forget about me. Um, Probably because he was hoping to get a good bit of commission. So, it's a mutual thing with the recruiter. So I got my second interview, and they actually flew me up to Washington State. Um, and that interview was all day. They started with meeting me on one of their new developments and kind of walk the site, go over their work product, show me a model home, um, kind of an hour and a half, just introduction. And then they invited me to their office in the afternoon, and I was there for nearly 4 hours. Um, and I guess to back up, because this was part of the 4 hours, between my first interview and the second, they sent me a PXT assessment, which was new to me. I'm not sure if anyone on the call here has heard about it, but it assesses your cognitive ability, your behavioral traits, and your interests. And that assessment was an hour and a half multiple choice questionnaire. Um, and they also sent me a DISC assessment, which DISC, I forget the acronyms, but it's basically like your personality profile. And so, to understand how people interact and approach tasks. So I had a lot of homework between my first and second interview. They even sent me a new site to do an assessment on. So similar to what I've heard from stories from people on the call, where you're kind of given a task and they assess it. And so I was a bit nervous on how that would go or how they would interpret it because we've had successes and failures from that on this call. But yeah, so once we got to the second interview and sitting in office, meeting in front of the president, the hiring manager, and then the HR director and talent person was on a video screen. They went through my job history starting with high school and, and every job between high school up to this point, and what were my positives and negatives, who were my mentors, everything taken away. It wasn't so much about if I knew how to do the job I applied for. It was, am I going to be a good fit for the team, personality wise, culturally, so on and so forth. And so um, I've never been part of an interview that long. And so that was kind of a daunting task for me, but it went well. You gauge how well when your hiring manager is nodding and in agreement, and you get a few chuckles from the president. So, very happy about that. But I think why I'm in this position I am now is because I expanded my scope to Washington State and am willing to relocate. Um, Fortunately, it's me and my wife and two dogs. So I'm in a good position to be able to uproot ourselves and move back to Washington. Um, if this job didn't work out, I think we'd want to stay in Utah. The cost of living here is great. The how owning a house and buying, during COVID, I secured very favorable terms. And so if Washington interview didn't go well or I didn't accept the job, my contingency plan was to focus all in Utah. Um, and with site development and permitting, broad range, cities, counties, or private developers. Let's see here. Yeah, so after my interview was about a week and they called my references, I had to provide um, not, they didn't care about the references I had a list of. They wanted to hear from my last four managers, whether I had good terms or not. Fortunately, I did, reached out to each one of them, and they were more than willing to be my references. And so it took about a week to get a call back and get a job offer, and did some negotiation back and forth. Um, Something to consider is, we go into this job search for our base salary, and I had a base salary range that I thought was competitive. And so had to put it on the application, told them about it in the first interview because they asked. But when they came back, it was about 10 grand lower than the low point of my range. And I really felt it initially as kind of a slap in the face. But then they explained to me part of the compensation package, the vehicle stipend, like 6 grand vehicle stipend, 800 towards a cell phone. And then their bonus structure is based on profit sharing. They're a private company, so the profit sharing goes back to the employees as a bonus. And there was some convincing to do that should be in my consideration because there's always an asterisk of whether or not the company does well. So I told them, based on cost of living change, I needed to be, at least 2 grand more on the base salary than what they offered, and considering the vehicle stipend and cell phone. But I needed that to feel like one, I could make the same living in Tacoma, Washington as I do here in Magna, Utah, and two, to feel like somewhat of a bump, um, a little bit of a upgrade. I accepted. The job title is Senior Land Entitlement Project Manager with Pacific Lifestyle Homes, and my first day is June 10th. Let's see. I think I covered everything, Steve. I am open to questions and diving deep, or if there's anything you and I talked about that I missed, happy to share that. You're muted.
It helps if I unmute and I talk to you guys. But it's the same thing I always say. I'm just going to throw some people here at random. They have no idea who they're going to be called. If they have something to share or ask, I guess is a real question. Number one, big round of applause. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
I'm going to throw somebody I throw in there first a lot of times. There he is.
Hey, Dax.
Hey, yeah, congratulations. Congratulations for going through all those rounds too. It can be tiring and exasperating sometimes to go through those types of things. I would say just sort of maybe talk a little bit more about those that full day of interviews and the sort of different things and the way that you kind of kept your responses fresh, but on kind of focused in on what they say. I think sometimes that's hard when you've got multiple interviews with multiple different people and people are asking the same questions, but also some of the same people are in those. If it's a group interview, you've got similar people in there. And so you kind of want to like maintain focus, but also give them something fresh. How did you handle that part?
Well, I, I use Chat GPT a lot during this job search in my application journey. And so I went through and asked Chat GPT to give me, just interview me, conversational pace. I pasted in the job description. I pasted in my resume and said, based off of these two components, let's do an interview. and it records your responses to the questions so you can print them out later. So I had that by me sort of as a template and reference, even though they didn't ask, you know, it felt like in each job, it was what were your strengths and weaknesses. And so I had to really use, for example, the water they offered me as a prop to take a beat and think about it. So take a drink of water, take a deep breath, and if I need more time, great. That's a great question. Let me think back to high school, which was for me almost 20 years ago. So um, graduating and just talk about being new at an employment and what it means to have work ethic and work hard. And so it was similar theming throughout my entire career history. And so um, pulling from personal experiences also helped out, not just, oh, at the job, I was, really good at communicating with clients, but I took initiative to, um, you know, meet with them off site, off premise, or little bits and tricks that I think elevated what I could do for them, so to speak. So if they're asking me to push hard on getting a permit, that may mean I have to go and sit at the county office until someone meets with me. And so drawing in how I use those tools in prior jobs to illustrate how I would do it for them, that was big in each question, each job I've had. Um, pull in from past experiences that would highlight my ability in this new role. So it was tough. I mean, I hadn't thought about anything beyond my planning job out of college, let alone the warehouse jobs I've had in between and things that I didn't think applied. But they wanted really to know how I am as an employee. Am I easy to coach and learn new skills and experiences? And so just pulling from past jobs and I tend to remember the bad things that happen easier than the good things. And so just being able to spin those as a learning opportunity and be honest in my responses. So yeah, it just took a long time having four people ask about each job. But just having props like water and a deep breath to think through it and not rush um, really helped me out. And I would say, Maverick is a great place to work for, and I really wish you the best on that journey. If you have any specific questions about Maverick too, happy to answer. But sorry,
Thanks.
kind
I
of jumping.
appreciate that. Yeah, I connected with you on LinkedIn, so if I have any, I'll hit
Sweet.
you up.
Okay,
So
great.
yeah, thanks for your answer. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks,
Good
Dax.
luck up there.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next is Jared. It's Justin, excuse me.
Hi. Sorry about that. I'm sure the land in what's it
In Washington?
requirements in Washington is quite different than here. How did you compensate for that?
Yeah, it is. Washington has tons of rules and laws,
That's what I meant to say. Sorry.
adding much more than Utah. Well, I think a lot has changed in the last 5.5 years, so I have a lot to learn. And so I admitted that to them and saying, I love, for example, their job description. They offer like 20 hours of education a year that they pay for. And so part of that is joining different um, association societies and learn from them. But also, I do have experience in Washington. I've been a planner for 2 counties, and I worked for a civil engineering firm in Washington, and I really played up my roles in the residential side of each one, permitting people who just building a home on their lot or people who want to subdivide. And then, of course, working for clients who had larger properties and subdividing. And so I I pulled a lot from those experiences, and with a lot of caveats of I'm sure the rules and regulations have increased and made it harder, and so part of my ability to navigate that is taking the time to learn and sit down and read through them, and really get familiar. Because, for example, I want to know more about the code than the planner I'm applying to. The city staff, I want to know the code better than them. And that was kind of something I reiterated multiple times in the interview is like, I don't know everything and I have a lot to learn and a lot has changed, but I'm willing to take the time and make sure I do it right for this company. So that was the approach I took.
Cool. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Good luck out there.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up is Gail.
Congrats, Matt. So excited for you.
Thank you.
And think that's awesome that you're willing to relocate and that, everybody's willing to go up there. So I had a couple of questions for you, but when you were talking about negotiating the salary during your job offer, they did include some other opportunities, the car and the phone and all of that. When you were thinking about doing that, I guess my question is like, and maybe this is for everybody else, is it very common to negotiate your salary? And were you worried at all about like them rescinding the offer, or is it more just like you're never going to get told anything or given more unless you ask? So tell me about your negotiation strategies and any fears or concerns you had.
Sure. Well, if starting with the application itself online, a lot of them are Workday and the ATS automatics review. So if the field box allowed text, I put in a phrase, I look forward to negotiate my salary based on the experience and skills I described during the interview process. I don't think that helped me. That might have been an automatic boot from ATS. I don't know. But for this job, I gave them the mid-range from their salary posted on the job description. Washington State is one of the states that does require the range to be posted. And I had heard from a few different people, if I start high, they may see it as not that they couldn't pay me that, but my motivation may be lost being an employee of that company because they're not able to offer me as large of raises as other employees if they started a little bit lower. And so I offered right smack dab in the middle in my first interview. And when they sent me the offer letter, it was 10 grand less, but they did include other components of the offer compensation package that at the end of the year still equate to what I had asked for. And well, it was actually 2 grand short than what I had asked for. And so I negotiated that. I first started higher. I said, so I was hoping for 120 grand in my salary compensation. They offered 110, and I sent back counter offered, saying my goal is between 115 and 120. How can we get there? Then they explained, well, look at the vehicle stipend, that's a cash stipend, cell phone stipend. And we understand that bonuses are always an asterisk and not a guarantee, so we won't count that. So that gets you at 116. And just looking at what I had made at Maverick and the cost of living increase, I needed to be at like 118 to really accept the job. So I asked, okay, well, I need 2 grand more to feel like this is at least a lateral move. So that was my negotiation strategy. Started out mid range, they countered with less, and then I countered with back at the mid range. And then they convinced me otherwise, I guess. But I'm hoping that I prove my worth and that each year, you get at least a cost of living increase.
Right. Were there any like surprising lessons that you didn't expect, from this interview process that would be helpful, I guess, for the rest of us, just as we're hopefully preparing for an interview?
Yeah, I mean those assessments were new to me.
Mhm.
I've never had never been sent a link prior to a second interview. I've had to take assessments during my employment just as kind of a S and G's on, hey, how well do we work together? So being willing and open to odd, I guess I consider that an odd ask. Um, the interview was way different than anything else. So expect the unexpected. Um, I really was happy that I had kind of practiced with Chat GPT and printed off our back and forth on it because um, taking 10 seconds to review those may feel like a minute or 20 during the interview, but to them it's just 10 seconds. So being able to look down and come prepared with a portfolio, not just my resume, but my notes. Um, Nothing out of the norm as far as an interview process, I would say. I had a list of 20 questions so I could cherry pick a few when they asked if I had questions. I mean, that I always appreciated when I was on an interview panel is when applicants have lots of questions and they're interviewing me or they're interviewing the company as well. So that helped out. And then Steve gave me a great tip that I think also helped is I had handwritten thank you cards after I got out of the interview and left it with the receptionist, addressed to each person on the interview panel. That I think was a good move because emails are great if you can't, but since I was there in person, I think that was an added touch that I hadn't done before.
That is such a good idea. I'm writing that note down as well. Thank you and
Well,
congrats. Hope all goes well in Washington.
thank you, Gail. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Hey Matt, I think I'm next. Congrats on landing the job. That's awesome. So I think this is kind of an obvious answer, but I just want to know, you start in a month. Is that just because you need enough time to move up there and get settled in? Why so long?
Yeah, and now it doesn't feel long enough. But um, in in the interview, they at the second interview, the president asked me because my wife also has to find a job, and I had mentioned our 2 month long distance relationship when she first moved down here and how unhappy we were, and they really wanted to ensure that I was going to be a happy employee. I said, well, my wife needs to be able to give 2 weeks. She doesn't want to pack up or be in charge of the house by herself. So we both want to move to Washington together. And so a realistic but quick time frame for us for listing the house and getting everything packed up is 4 weeks. And they said that's fine. So they had originally given me a start date of June 1st because my interview was so far back, but the actual offer and acceptance came around May 9th or something like that. And so just because of hiring managers' vacations and my brother getting married the first week of June, we were able to set on June 10th. So in Utah, would have said I could start immediately. But for here, moving to Washington, I think they had a very good understanding. So I I told them I needed 4 weeks so that my wife and I are both in Washington, and I'll
Mhm.
be able to be a strong employee from
Okay.
day.
Well, that's awesome. They were flexible with that. They understood that. So, and then I thought it was very interesting when you flew up there and you were there half a day. Did you know beforehand the president of the company was going to be part of the interview process, or did you find out when you got there?
Um, Actually, they sent me an email with an agenda a couple days before and said plan on 2.5 to 3 hours. And here are the attendees. It was the hiring manager, the president of the company, um, HR director, and talent acquisition with HR that were going to be on the call. So I did know ahead of time. Um, and for that, it made me excited because I think it showed that they really care, are interested. And so I felt like I was a good candidate if the president was showing up. And then also it's a small enough company that I'm not just a number. So I went in there with not so much fear of meeting with the higher up, but just kind of excitement and confidence.
Awesome. Awesome. I think those were the main questions that I had. So congrats, man.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And I think one more part to go with that, Chris, was Matt, I think your wife flew up that afternoon to take a look at the surrounding area and make sure it's what you guys wanted to do.
Yeah, so the interview was a Thursday. I picked my wife up from the airport that evening and we spent the weekend kind of driving around the area and refamiliarizing ourselves. Um, just making sure like if they were to offer make an offer and I accepted, would we be happy here? And so that helped. This this part involved my wife just as much as I'm involved in it. And so, you know, your spouse is your teammate and you got to make sure you're both on board.
Were you in the same part of Washington when you lived there before, or was it a different part of Washington?
Actually, same part. Yeah, same
Okay.
county. Um,
Okay.
as a couple cities away, same county.
Okay, next up is Roger.
Hey,
Hey, Roger.
um, congratulations. It sounds like you did a lot of homework and a lot of work to get this job. Um, Question for you. Um, what was some of the tests that they actually had you perform?
Yeah. So, um, the assessment they had is the hiring manager sent me a parcel of raw land in Gig Harbor, Washington, and asked me to spend an hour kind of doing a feasibility analysis, a little bit of due diligence on the development potential, understanding that I don't have every resource available. I don't have their pro forma or a survey, but it was basically, is this site worth purchasing for Garrett Custom Homes, Pacific Lifestyle Homes? And so I had to draw out a site plan and show where the roads were coming in, the sewer connection, the water connection, how many lots we can get on the land, and then what can we expect to sell the lots for. And so I used comparables of other neighborhoods that have been recently developed as part of that. And so they asked for a one-page write-up. And if I had time, a site plan, but that's the most fun part of it is drawing and creating. So that's what I included. With the PXT assessment, it was online and it was a lot of multiple choice asking me if I strongly disagree or strongly agree with situations in the workplace. Say someone asks me to do something that's conflicting with direction given by a manager, I am going to speak up for myself and say no. Do I strongly agree or disagree or anything in between? They had me do algebra to linear algebra, I think. I don't know. I've only made it to pre-calc, but it was a lot of equations. And what helped me is PEMDAS to find the answers to questions. They asked, word matching, what words closely match a given thing. Yeah, it was multiple choice, and it took me about an hour and a half. So a lot of math, a lot of kind of personal assessment, and then or behavioral traits, and then I guess reading comprehension. And then DISC was, I believe it was similar, but it was just about like strongly agree or disagree on I do it this way versus that way. Kind of like Myers-Briggs personality assessment. I'm sure they have a 4-letter acronym. The thing is, they didn't give me my results. They just said I did good. So I don't know
Wow.
much about those assessments.
They actually had you do a cognitive test too?
Yeah, that was part of that PXT assessment. That was testing my cognitive abilities through numerous questions.
So they really wanted to know what they were getting.
Yeah, yeah, it felt like very little asking me about my experience in land development and much more about how I am as a human being and will I be a good fit to work in their office. Um, so I do appreciate their thoroughness and spending the time and money and resources to make sure I'm a good fit.
So are
But
they going to relocate you up there?
no, and they told me
No.
that from first interview. We do not do a relocation bonus or pay for relocation. And so that was a factor I had to keep in the back of my mind when negotiating salary.
Did you try to negotiate a signing bonus?
I did not. I do have Steve's printout about kind of some script to use, but I just negotiated my compensation package starting with the base salary. I was pretty pleased with 401k matching, medical benefits, and the level of confidence they had in the bonus. Um, and so it was just about base salary and considering that vehicle stipend and cell phone. So
Ooh,
yeah, once I asked, for that range and they said no, I felt like I kind of could tell that asking for a sign-on bonus wasn't going to make much difference.
yeah, I guess you could feel that out.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of situational based on the moment.
Sounds like you got a great job. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next up is Janelle.
Matt, how are you?
Hi, Janelle. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Hopefully you're excited, right? That's the plan.
I'm very excited, but also we have a lot of stuff, so the
Going
work
on. Yeah.
part kind of cancels it out.
Well, offering someone a job, that's my favorite part of my job. So, um, I wanted to know as you went through the process with this company, what what did you do to evaluate the company to make sure they were right for you in your next role?
Yeah, I Googled the crap out of their two names, and there was some Reddit posts. And the Reddit posts were I don't remember what thread, but it was like maybe are Vancouver, one of the cities they build in, and there's some negative comments about the home building process.
Hmm.
And so I use that as part of my questions to ask them, like, how do you guys handle customer complaints and what do you do to make it right? I just scoured their website for both websites. They have one for Pacific Lifestyle Homes, one for Garrett Custom Homes. I tried looking, so some counties have really good permit portals online where you can search for names to see if they have permits. And so I kind of evaluated how long it takes them to get through the permitting process just by looking at the timeframes posted on these portals. Um, Yeah, that was primarily my research. I wanted to know what customers thought about them. Their website obviously speaks highly of them and or themselves, and that they deliver a quality project. And so I wanted to see if that was how others felt. And it's kind of a mixed bag. I think a lot of people don't leave a review unless they've had a bad experience. They've had a good experience, they move on.
Right.
And so I was kind of feeling it out. But what helped me and helped them, honestly, is invited me to that neighborhood that was under construction. And then I also knew of other neighborhoods that they had built within the area. So between the time of meeting on site and the couple hours I had until being at their office, I drove around to their different neighborhoods and um, looked at the product that they had developed and seen, homes moved in and lived in, kind of just being a creep, driving up and down streets, but analyzing what they build. And yeah, so there was a lot of kind of that in the moment day research that I did. But yeah, scouring Google, scouring their websites, kind of paying attention to how excited the hiring manager was about offering me this job or continuing to talk to me and answer questions I had.
And is there one specific question you asked them that really gave you an insight into how they run their company or how they treat their employees?
Yeah, I had asked them, well, not a direct answer to your question, but what I care about too is how companies treat their partners and their
Mm.
consultants. So I asked them about their relationship with various civil engineering consultants and have they ever withheld money or instead of a net 30 payment schedule paying each month, did they ever wait to motivate? And the president's response was no, we pay our consultants on time. We don't use that as a tactic. If we have an issue, we address it right away. The hiring manager chipped in and said, we've used X consultant a few times. We weren't happy with their work product or the communication and keeping us apprised of the situation. So we've narrowed it down to we use these two consultants. And so that kind of gave me a feel because I've worked for a consultant and I've had really crappy clients who didn't pay on time, didn't treated us poorly, stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to get a feel from how well they work with consultants. So I think that was beneficial, and their answers gave me confidence that they treat their partners well. Um, let's see, anything else that was a good question. Not that comes to mind. I my I wish I had my notes that I brought with me to the interview still, but I got too excited and recycled them. But
That's good. Yeah, well, you're decluttering, right? As you try to pack and move.
yeah.
I hear you. That's
So to answer your question, it wasn't really about specific to their work product, but their partnership with other consultants.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Next up is Dexter.
Hey Matt, how's it going?
Hey, Dexter.
Well, first, congrats on getting the opportunity. It's always good to hear. Um, I was always curious about moving to Seattle myself. This looks like a good place to find a good job. But in your job search, how quickly was it your decision, or was it something that you decided on to look for opportunities outside of Salt Lake or specifically just in Seattle? Was that always the goal, or was that something that that just needed to be added on?
In the moment, probably the first 2 weeks after being informed that I had an end date with Maverick, it was a shotgun approach. And it was during that time that I started this process, so to speak. So I had applied for a job posted by, they're called True Fit Staffing, and they've got a couple offices in Washington. They basically copied the same posting that Pacific Lifestyle Homes had, but I just didn't see them. And so I went through them, and the calls started, um, a few weeks later after I was informed, but I had still been applying both to Washington and Utah jobs. I think just because my wife and I are from there, we grew up in Washington, Western Washington specifically. We were kind of seeing this as a catalyst for change. Um, and so if something happened, great. But we started making, I guess, halfway through this entire process, a pros and cons list of staying versus moving. And towards the end of it, there was more pros to staying, primarily dealing with the cost of living and my wife having a great job and us having a house with a mortgage I'll never be able to secure ever in my life again. So um, that's when we were thinking, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, no worries. Fortunately, my wife is able to support both of us while I'm searching. So it was kind of just like, hey, we're from Washington. 3 years ago, we were talking about moving back. Let's give it a shot and just apply. Um, but as this interview process went on, the feeling I got from the company was that, there's someone who treat their employees well and um, have a great work product. And so, as it progressed, I was getting more excited about this job. And it would have taken probably quite a lower job offer for me to walk away from this. So, yeah, that was kind of our motivation. And Seattle's super expensive. We cannot afford to live there, in my opinion. So we're further south in Tacoma. But yeah,
That's pretty much all I wanted to know. I'm still in job search, but uh,
sure.
congratulations again. That's all I have.
Thanks, Dexter. Good luck to you.
Thanks.
Okay. Carol, are you still there? Okay. I'll go to Brad. We're wrapping up. Brad.
Um, First question I had was, how much competition are you finding for the jobs you're applying for? Some of the ones I've applied for, there's hundreds or even thousands of other people I'm competing with.
Yeah, so I asked that question during the recruit to the recruiter, and he said I can't tell you confidentiality reasons, which reasonable answer. I didn't push back on that one. And then when I asked in the first interview, they said there was only a handful of applicants at this stage. And so I don't know. I didn't ask in the in-person interview, but I
Yeah.
have a feeling there wasn't much competition. Um, my role in general and the jobs I've applied to, I think there's plenty of competition because site development or entitlements or permitting or planning, they all can be blended together. And a person with a varied background that may only touch on a few points of experience that I have could also get the job. So I think competition was strong, but what helped me was willing to relocate and just searching outside of Utah as well.
Any other tips you have on making your application noticed above the others that are?
Well, if you didn't see Janelle's presentation, I would revisit that one because I think it is about getting in early and utilizing the templates that Steve has shared to get past those ATS systems. What I feel like really helped me out in the success of this job was that I applied with a staffing agency first, and they had this constant follow-up between me and the employer before they, hey, you got it. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Going back to Gail's question, I think I think it's probably helpful to offer mid-range of the salary or a little bit less than top, giving them a reasons to promote you or give you salary increases is a component in their willingness to interview you. If you're at the top already, they may not see a point because they know the motivation won't be there per se. But hopefully during the interview process, you can negotiate higher than what you put down. Um,
Yeah.
I think that would help. I know that's a challenging thing because everyone on here has so much experience. But
Whenever they give a range, I always put something right in the middle. That it's when they don't have a range and they won't let you finish the application without putting some number in the what's your required salary.
yeah,
That
for those, I use those salary.com, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, and ranges and kind of, I put in, okay, I have over 11 years experience doing this type of work. What does that equate? And I
yeah.
put that in because honestly, I don't think saying willing to negotiate as a response in those field boxes help. I think that
Yeah.
might be a disqualifier.
And a lot of them restrict you can only put numbers in there anyways. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Just don't forget those zeros because they may hire you at $12 a year.
Yeah. So with relocating, are they going to give you a deal on a new house up there?
Well, they do offer discounts on new homes. However, their starting home is it's expensive.
Is way out of reach.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm happy to live in an older home. I like DIY and being a handyman, so we can work on that.
Okay. Well, congratulations and good luck to you in Washington.
Thank you, Brad. Good luck to you.
Thanks.
All right. Next up is Jason. I think that's our final. Okay.
Well, congratulations, Matt. Um, where they wanted you to go back and get references from your previous four managers, especially the manager that laid you off, was that problematic?
Yeah, and I told him up front that the manager who laid me off, he came from Come and Go. He had only been my manager for a year, and I don't think he would be a good fit to give you a reference on my work habits. One, he was remote. He lived in a different state than even Come and Go, so he was rarely in person. So I told him I'd prefer to give you someone else I worked under at Maverick as a reference rather than my last manager because I hadn't worked with him. I don't think he and I developed any kind of work history that would be a valid check to your background check or your reference checks. And so I told them about other managers at Maverick I had worked under, and they accepted one of those.
Did they?
Yeah, I knew it would be problematic, and I really didn't want to give them my last manager at Maverick.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of the same thing, trying to ask for a reference from him and just it'd be very uncomfortable anyway. And like I say, I don't think the reference would be very sparkling. Um, but
And to be honest, they asked for references of all my job, but I said, well, some of these people are probably passed away. I don't have their contact information. They've been retired for a number of years. So it kind of narrowed down to the last four because
wow.
I was like, yeah, I can get them. I mean, I have a list right here of references, of professional references, but they just weren't all my managers, you know. So it was kind of interesting. That was unexpected.
Yeah. Well, that was my main question, but I hope you have a good time out there.
Thank you, Jason.
So, and this is not quite going back home.
No, not quite, but close enough.
Yeah, that's still
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, take care.
Well, thank you, Jason. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Oh, there is one more person. She's back. Carol.
Yeah, so congrats, Matt. It's been interesting listening to you. I have a heavy home building background and I worked at Whirlpool and at Merillat's with some of those big builders, Toll Brothers,
Oh, yeah.
Brookfield, you name it. So when I heard your background and that you were urban planning in college, I was like, no wonder the recruiter jumped all over you because you fit it to the T. So congrats on that one. I think it will be a great spot for you and be a little more aligned with um, maybe what you went to college for, which is building out communities because that's what you're doing. You're taking that barren piece of property that they bought and working it through the system to even bring a Maverick or a come and go right off of the interstate as they start. You're funneling them through
Yeah.
into the housing development. So congrats. It was also interesting hearing your interview and the process you had to go through and don't feel I mean, I do feel sorry for you about the full day interview. I remember when those did happen. They were brutal.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you recognizing the urban planning connection and ties because that was part of the interview is making those connections and ties.
Yeah, it will be. I think you're going to have much more fun at this one than putting up a gas station and getting that whole craziness of, yeah, you had to do, I'm sure a lot of the permits, but it's more than just a curb and putting in the EPA tanks the correct way and getting all of that. It's wow, seeing in 10 years something that you did actually have homes that families are enjoying living in the community that you created with walking paths. And I was Whirlpool's representative to National Home Building Association and the 50
Oh,
Plus Council.
cool.
So I was really big at that time in 55 plus housing that the large builders were putting in 20 years ago to meet the baby boomers. And so that's why, yeah, being able to design those walking paths right off the start and the little exercise areas and yeah, so
Yeah,
cool.
it's fun. Yep, creating those common spaces where people gather and meet for sure. Yeah, I'm excited.
So congrats.
Thank you, Carol. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, and connect with me, Matt, because you never know when we might need each other's referrals.
Oh, for sure.
I put my link in the chat there.
Okay, great.
Okay. Well, Matt, any last parting words for everybody here?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was last week we kind of attributed this to an AA meeting, in that we're in the same boat, same position, and I do feel a little guilty jumping out of that boat, so to speak. But I really do appreciate everyone on here sharing their stories through Rich's and just hearing about the work ethic and to be able to demonstrate that during an interview. If there's ways to tie in, and maybe this requires more thought in your one-on-ones with Steve, but I think it really speaks to your work ethic and the tenacity. Having each week gone through so much, putting out so much product of yourself. And so, if I had to do this again, bringing that into my interview might be helpful, because at the end of the day, I want to represent, my work ethic to future employers. So I'm inspired by that. And yeah, just really appreciate the tools that Steve has given me and given all of us, and the stories from everyone. So sincerely wish everyone the best of luck.
Hey,
Thank you,
Matt, I got one question for you.
Hmm.
Is that tank you got behind you, is that freshwater fish?
Yeah. Yeah, freshwater, small little community of tetras and one barb.
Well, if you're interested in getting rid of those fish, let me know.
Okay, cool. Actually, I've been thinking about that. What am I going to do for 12 hours with fish? As I drive.
Yeah, I'll be interested in taking those off you if you want.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We'll connect, Roger. That'd be great.
Okay.
Hey, a big round of applause for Matt
Oh,
coming and sharing today. It's okay. You can applaud yourself. Okay. This
habit.
is a feature we all need to be good at, patting ourselves on the back. No one else is going to probably do it for us. Okay, I'm going to end this recording. We're going to stay on. So again, big round of applause for Matt. Thank you and
Thank you.
congratulations.